Good morning and welcome everyone to our International Women's Day 2024 morning tea presentation. This morning we are extremely pleased to have with us Karen Jorritsma, Managing Director, Head of Equities Australia at RBC Capital Markets. Karen has 24 years financial markets experience across global markets, having worked in both sales and research. Prior to her current role as Head of Equities at RBC, she has worked on the trading floor at Citi, Deutsche Bank and ABN AMRO. She's also the chair of the RBC Securities Australia Board. Karen is a passionate advocate for diversity and inclusion in the financial markets. She sits on the executive committee of the current RBC Women's Network and founded Women in Funds. She previously established and chaired the Citi Women's Network Australia and ran the Markets Diversity Network. Karen continues to mentor a number of individuals across the Australian stock market. Karen is a regular contributor and media commentator on Sky Business, ABC's The Business, the AFR and The Australian. She attended the Australian National University and graduated with a Commerce Economics degree and Business Administration Leadership from Harvard. Outside of work, Karen supports a range of charities like Lifeline Australia and Plates for Mates. Karen and our very own Lisa Shand in Sydney are well known to each other, so who better to conduct this fireside chat? Over to you, Lisa.
Well, thank you very much, Terry, and good morning, everyone, and happy International Women's Day to you all. I have to say, this feels like a bit of a throwback because it reminded me very much of sitting on the desk at ABN AMRO, where Karen and I were research salespeople. Back then, it was very obvious that Karen had enormous capabilities, and she has many, many attributes. And the ones that I really want to point out from my perspective in terms of how I think you've actually achieved the success that you have are your keen intelligence, your excellent communication skills, your high energy, and I think really importantly, your ability to relate at a human level. So I want to congratulate you on your achievements and welcome you to Morgans.
Thank you very much. I think that's the nicest wrap-up I've ever had. I might get it with my boss and tell him those things. So great to be here.
Oh, thank you. So although we're celebrating International Women's Day today, the path that you've taken and what you've achieved in your career, I think, is instructive and relevant to both women and men in the finance industry. So could you provide the Morgans Network with a bit of background, a few insights in terms of your career and how you've got to where you have?
Sure. Thank you. Thanks, Lisa. And I mean, you were a part of it, to be honest. It is people like yourself that along the way, I was always, I think, really good at asking people for help, not in a help me, I'm useless way, but how do you do that better? How can I be better? Would you have 5 minutes to give me feedback? And I think I was always very prepared to take on feedback about my performance and what I could do better, especially when I was young. I was always looking out for mentors. I think I was, just to start my career very quickly, I actually got my first job. And whenever I tell the grads this story, they just laugh and think I made it up because I read a book called Liar's Poker, which is, the Michael Lewis book. When I was 15, I was in Canberra. I'd never met a stockbroker. And I read this book and, if anyone's read Liar's Poker, it's this great story of this wild 28-year-old around New York in a Ferrari. And I thought, yep, that's me. That's my choice. I'm done. So when I left my degree and all my friends were going to EY and applying for all these grad roles, I'm like, that's not for me. It's for other people. I know what I'm going to do. And my parents are getting a bit nervous because all my friends are going to grad interviews and they're like, what's your plan? I said, don't worry about it. Got it sorted. Got the white pages out because it was in the 90s. And I rang Solomon Brothers, which is where the guy in the book worked, rang the head of the floor. Oh, I'd like to come and work for you. And they were just dying of laughter, by the way. Like the guys on the trading floor, and you can imagine some woman rings up and asks for a job. Like I know on my floor would be like, sure, come in. You're going to clean our shoes. So I went in to have the meeting and they were laughing a lot, but ultimately 6 weeks later they offered me a role and it was, the get our sandwiches, do that sort of role. And I didn't care. I was just like, I'm doing anything that I need to do to be here. And from that moment on though, I was like, every time I was like, who can I ask? What can I do? Who can I prove myself to? And one thing I say to the grads is when you show up, ask the MDs if you can get a coffee or, just ask. So I think what I've done well is ask. And this morning I was just on the phone to New York asking for other things. So I'm always just asking. Because I figure you can say no, but they might say yes. So,
that's great. I mean, it's taking the courage in your hands, isn't it? I mean, as you say, the worst that can happen is they say no.
And I'll ask again next week. So it's fine.
That was one of those attributes, persistence. I might get into something that I think is relevant for women, but also increasingly men, as men become more carers in their roles. Balancing work and life's demands. Obviously, it's increasingly challenging, particularly in a connected world. So what approach do you take to attend to family duties as well as just maintaining the momentum in the growth in your career? And is there anything that RBC does in particular to support that kind of balance in life?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I definitely think as you help people manage their careers as they get older, and I always say flexibility is a people issue. I absolutely refuse to make it the woman's problem, because I found in my career when they talk to the Women's Network and then we're asking about flexibility, I'm like, no, it's actually for people, because I've got single fathers working for me who have 3 children, and I've got guys working for me whose parents are sick or dying. So everyone needs that opportunity. And so I'm agnostic whether it's man or woman asking for things. I'm also agnostic if it's for children, for your dog, or because your best friend's sick, because I also don't think that's right either. So I have that rule around flexibility. RBC's been very good post-COVID. I know there's a big push to get everyone back to the office, and we've been as pushy as anyone about that. We have the 4+ rule, which, look, on the training floor, all my guys are in, but they almost refused to work at home when it was compulsory. They love the environment, so I'm very happy that that's so easy. In research, of course, you need that quiet time, so there's more working from home, but we're massively flexible about it. And because of the global nature of the job, we are all connected like you guys are. You have calls late at night. Often, my poor Michelle over here knows that at midnight on Mondays I start my day often with New York at 8 o'clock. So I just say there's no work-life balance. It's what you're happy to do in your head about how comfortable you are with how much effort you're putting into all parts of your life. And if you think you're being good at home and good at work, well, that's a good work-life balance. And I don't know what that looks like for each person. I know what it looks like for me, and I feel like I'm doing kind of okay everywhere, even though I feel a bit stressed. But I don't think there can be a definitive, that's what it looks like. It's not 9 to 5 and then you go home necessarily. So I always say it's what you're comfortable with, what makes you a happy person, and what makes you happy to be at work. But that requires your boss to be quite flexible in their thinking.
I was about to say, yeah, it is. It does actually put the onus very much on the boss, because they're still running the business.
Yes. So I do have firm rules. 10 to 4 we're on the desk because it's market hours. But outside of that, I've got guys who want to play soccer with their kids. I've got women who want to go home and have dinner with their children. People want to go and see their friends. Everyone's got things to do. So it's just, as long as you're doing your job, that's probably the ask.
Yes. I think just changing tack a little bit, the importance of mental health to our general well-being, that couldn't have been shown more clearly during the COVID years.
Yeah.
But particularly in our industry, which can obviously be quite pressured, where in our business and in the industry in general, people are effectively running their own businesses. So there are certainly challenges associated with that. And I think having good mental health is really necessary when it comes to coping with the stresses of work and other life commitments. So what can you share with us in terms of your strategy when it comes to mental health, things that you may have done yourself or things that you've seen other people do that have been successful? And what role does physical fitness play in that as well?
So that's a really good question. Mental health is a huge thing. And when I started my job, a lot of the guys I had come out of big firms, and where mental health was not a thing you could discuss in a comfortable way. And there was a lot of shame around saying, I'm not feeling that great. And then I had a bunch of guys who were in their late 40s getting divorced. And, their mental health is affected, and you can definitely see it. So I just said, we're all going to talk about it. So I talk about it. I send out emails about it. I say it's fine. I encourage you to take an afternoon off if you need to address it, go get therapy. I just talk about it and say, I need to be okay with everything. Personally, I'm a massive pusher of fitness. I think whether it even be for a 5-minute walk, I always advise people who feel a bit hot-headed in the office to take a breath and go for a walk around the block and come back and talk to me when they've done that. Because I think the minute you just get some perspective outside, see the sun, start breathing, you're like, you know what, I don't need to blow that person's face off today. I'm calmer than I was 5 minutes ago. But I run a lot. I leave the office every day religiously at 4:30 and go for a run and then work again. But that's my time, and I'm pretty strict about going on that.
Yeah.
You have to be.
And do you find that leading by example helps?
Yeah, because I walk out the door so everyone feels comfortable to go.
Yeah.
And they do. They go and play soccer and do things, and I want them to.
Yeah.
I've got to live.
Absolutely. It's not all about work.
I also encourage people to take their leave. I'm pretty pushy at Christmas around annual leave, especially at Christmas, because I think it's a good time to be with friends or family or, whoever's important to you, and enjoy it. Just go. There's no pride to saying to me, I haven't had a holiday in 3 years. If you say that to me, I'm like, well, you're a loser, and we're going to talk about what is wrong with you, because I think that's a huge problem though, because to be proud of not doing other things in life, I'm not particularly impressed.
Yeah.
So I'm very big on pushing for holidays. Even if you just stay at home, walk around your house, that gives you some perspective, and you notice when people haven't had a holiday. Yeah. I definitely can tell if someone's had a week at home, you're like, oh, good, welcome back. The nice guy that we all used to know.
You sound like the kind of taskmaster I should have.
Yeah, you never took a holiday.
So as Terry mentioned, you've had a long and successful career spanning over 24 years. So looking back at your achievements, what would you say to someone embarking on their career now? What kind of tips and advice would you give at this point?
Oh, gosh. I mean, do you know what I would say? You've got to love it. I do this because I love it. I mean, I always loved markets from the day I started, and, you were a fierce debater on the desk of stocks and valuation. You really beat valuation into me. And you just have to enjoy it, because if you're not enjoying it, it's going to be a really long year, much less 24 years. So that's probably the number one thing. But I think other than that, I set myself goals. I'm pretty strict with myself around discipline and what I'm doing and where I'm going. And I give my own self a review at the end of every year. And I'm really honest about how I went. In fact, I just was on the phone to Global HR saying, feel free to give me some constructive feedback. I'm not scared to ask for that, because I think then you can address either people's perceptions of you or what your gaps might be. I think the worst thing you can do is not take on feedback. So I think that's probably been the key thing. But do you know what? Over 24 years, it hasn't always felt successful. I think you've had years where you think you've done a terrible job, and you've got years where it's hard, and years where you think, wasn't my best. And I think asking for mentors and things also helps.
Yeah.
Especially when you're younger. But even now I have listed CEOs who are my mentors, and, people I really admire, their drive and their passion and their skills. And I'm always asking people, can I have a coffee to see what makes you tick?
Yeah.
It's so fascinating.
No, it is. So from your vantage point, would you say that the industry has changed very much from when you started to now? And do you think that younger people need to take a different approach?
It's changed a lot, and probably for the better. I mean, you know this. I don't have to tell you the story, but it was pretty horrific for women when we started, and I think it was embarrassing. So I'm pleased it's better. I think it was probably bad for men too. I know men who were bullied very badly in their younger career, and it was accepted and no one talked about it. So I'm very, very pleased that I think as an industry, more respectful. I think we're more reasonable as an industry. I think we're still as hardworking. I think the young guys coming through and the young women coming through are so clever.
Yeah.
So, our challenge now, that because we're competing against tech for really smart people, we've got to be really smart about how we engage with them and the flexibility we offer. So, I think it's definitely a different place. But I think the career is equally as exciting.
Yeah.
But, we have other challenges now in our industry to take smart people away from technology and really good stuff, being a fashion influencer and stuff they actually want to do.
Yeah. Do you think the industry is actually more open to the idea of giving younger people a go? I think in the past it's probably been a little bit more hierarchical than perhaps it is now. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think it is easier. I mean, it's definitely easier. And I run the rule too that we have meetings, and if the youngest person in the room has a great idea, we're doing that idea. I don't care if you've been here for a year or 15 years. Like, that's a smart idea. Let's not be too proud to admit that, the smartest person in the room might be 22. They might not know other stuff, but, I'm very open-minded about how that looks.
Yeah.
And I think the diversity, I've hired people who are not also from finance, and they often have a completely different, one of my best guys is a pilot who came out of Qantas. And, his way of looking at the world is different to mine, but he's process-driven, having been a pilot, and he adds a lot of value.
Yeah. So
I think if you kind of also, when you're hiring people, expand what you're really looking for, you can really open up the spectrum to something interesting.
Absolutely. Our industry is one where participants continue to be mainly men. But the question I want to ask is, how can we as businesses, as employers, as managers do more to increase the level of female participation in the industry, but also female promotion in the industry?
That is the $1 million question.
It is.
And look, I spend a lot of time on all these committees and all these things talking about this. And I think we've got probably the junior part right now, whereas we decided to give, 50-50 on the intake for grads and interns. That's all, 50-50. And that's easy. What the sticky bit is when they get to 30 and have children, and then when it comes to the MD job, the reality of the business, or any business, is at the pointy end, it's not easy for men either.
Yeah.
Like, it is hard because there's going to be 15 men who miss out on that job, as there are women. So that is a pointy end of the curve issue. But I think we can do more to promote women coming back to work post having children, because we lose in our industry a lot of women doing that. And I think be real about, are we really running a boys' club? I think at the senior level, I often ask them in investment banking is I have a lot of men working for me, by the way, but, let's make sure it's not a place where we just talk about cricket, where the only entertainment is AFL. Like, let's actually open our minds to the fact that the client base now is increasingly different. So I have the view we have to match the clients we service in all ways, not just female. There's also other diversity. Yeah. But we need to reflect what the client wants and looks like, because they don't all like one person. They like lots of people.
Yeah.
I think that might be, if it's okay, Lisa, a wonderful note to wrap it up on, if that's okay. Thank you so much, Karen, and Lisa also, for just a thoroughly entertaining, inspiring and thought-provoking fireside chat. It's so enjoyable to see the genuine rapport the two of you have with each other. So that was a real win, I think, out of that this morning. But also a privilege to have, Karen, someone of your experience and stature to come and talk with us today. So thank you so much for that. And happy International Women's Day to you all. Have a great day and enjoy the celebrations.